You've probably heard of the famous Calvinist acronym TULIP that stands at the heart of many theological debates. TULIP stands for total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, and the final perseverance of the saints. But today, I want to begin talking about a new framework, a fresh perspective that's neither Calvinist nor Arminian, as a way to think through the gospel message. I want to begin talking about an acronym developed by Pastor Daniel Weierbach called LOTUS. LOTUS stands for Liable Depravity, Occupational Election, Total Atonement, Unlimited Grace, and the Security of the Believer. This framework emphasizes God's grace as well as man's responsibility. Our call to intentional service, it emphasizes the security of the believer. And then for me, above all, it really emphasizes and represents God's merciful and gracious heart. And it does all this without imposing a particular philosophical framework from the outside, but instead lets the Bible speak for itself in categories that it is itself most familiar with. But with tulips and roses and daisies already representing different views, why another flower in the garden of soteriology? Why the lotus? The reason is that this isn't really just an academic debate over preferred theological, much less soteriological frameworks. It's about how we relate to God's grace, to our own sinful condition, and the assurance we have in Christ. These are not academic or theological questions. Rather, they go to the very heart and the very foundation of what it means to be a Christian. And for those of us who have not been persuaded by or don't particularly resonate with the Calvinist or Arminian answers, Lotus offers us a fresh and deeply biblical perspective on that story. So over the next few videos, we're going to break down each letter of the LOTUS acronym. Today, we start with L, or liable depravity. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. Chris Morrison, Gulf Side Ministries, and I'm here today with Danny Weierbach. Danny, you have been on the channel before, so thanks so much. About a year or so, I think now. Thanks for being back with us.
Thanks for having me, man. It's always an honor and a privilege to be able to join with you and others. So I appreciate it.
I really appreciate it. So I wanted to have you on today to talk about Lotus. It has not had the coverage it should have had, at least on my channel. I know that some of the channels like Rev Reads and such have discussed it. You've talked about it. It's becoming quite a thing. And so I want to discuss, kind of go through in this little 5-part video series, each each point of what the letters of Lotus stand for. Before I do, just real quick, because you've been here before, just tell the audience a little bit about who you are and kind of where we can find more about you.
Okay. So like I said, Daniel Weierbach, I'm an assistant pastor out in Prattville, Alabama, at Open Door Baptist Church. I got saved later in life when I was 27, and then just God gave me a burden to go ahead and study scripture, be an apologist as far as the faith in general towards atheism and skepticism. So I really started C4C, Contending for Christ, back in 2014, which we started with newsletters, and it evolved into articles, blogs, a website, and then to the YouTube channel and podcast. So the Lord also burdened me to write, like you sort of mentioned, this little guy right here. And so I'm looking forward to talking about this. There's been a lot of good traction, good feedback, but there's been a lot of critics as well. And so maybe we'll talk about that also. But again, thanks for having me, buddy.
Oh, I'm super excited. I have the first time I heard about Lotus, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And the more over the last, well, I guess, year or so that I've looked at it and thought about it, I'm like, this is just right. This is just correct. In fact, in my own ministry, I've recently moved to Maryland. I've been talking to the pastor up here, and I'm like, this is just the right way to view, for example, election. They're like, well, yeah, that's just that just makes good sense. So I'm looking forward to all that. So, Danny, where can it, obviously we're going to discuss this now and beyond, going to your YouTube channel, and I'll put all those links in the description of this and the other videos. Where can we find, where can they get that book, first of all?
Well, the book's Amazon, so you can get it for paperback, or you can get it on Kindle. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free on Kindle Unlimited. what I am offering, as well as if there's any missionaries doing missionary work and trying to reach folks overseas, let me know. Email me, c4capologetics@gmail.com, and I'll get you a free PDF copy. That way you can use that to go ahead and help champion the cause of free grace message to whosoever. So shoot me an email for a PDF copy. Otherwise, really, it's just on Amazon.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. So everybody, get the book, read it. Let us know what you think. Come back in the comments what you like or what you don't understand. We can do some follow-up conversations. All right. So then before we start jumping into each one of them letter by letter, just tell me the story, kind of what LOTUS is. Again, I think probably viewers have seen my own comments right before this started, but kind of what it is. And then more, I also want to hear about the story of why you came up with this new flower acronym again. Why another flower in the soteriological garden?
So first, let me apologize. I got a note that my connection is unstable up here, and so I don't know if I froze there for a minute. But did you ask me why did I start Lotus? Why did I origins of it? So basically, it's about a year and a half ago. I was interviewing Sean Wilson on our channel as far as theological labels. Came to a realization that Arminians have daisy, tulip is Calvinism, provide for provisionism, roses is another one for, I think, Arminius, modalists, and that free grace never really had one that stuck. And so I was burdened from there to go ahead and try to find a flower acronym that would actually counter tulip, because that's the most popular and most well-known acronym out there. I'm not, some people say, locally that I'm a theologian, but talking to people like you and others, I am not a theologian. There's a lot of people a lot smarter. I'm just a guy that I had a desire and a burden to sort of structure free grace soteriology in a framework that also is compared and contrasted with TULIP to show, okay, this is what I believe biblical soteriology is. Because what I come to find out is a lot of people in the church within Christendom, not scholars, not theologians, but just regular lay folks, they'll be like, I don't really agree with predestination. I don't really agree that you can lose your salvation as far as conditionalism. I just don't know where to fit. I don't know if I'm a 1-point Calvinist or a 2-point Arminian. So Lotus really was something that's like, hey, this is probably where you fit in allowing people to see these tenets. They're like, I agree with them. I got comments on videos saying I'm a 5-point Lotus guy, or this matches me 100% finally. And so it's encouraging to hear that. But
it's nice to have a label. Not that labels are important, but to go, oh, this represents where I am. That's just a nice thing. And I think about, again, you and I talked about my own Calvinism journey, but I just remember going from a 3.5 point down to a 2.5 point final. I was a 0-point Calvinist. And if someone had put this book in my hands, I think I would have been like, yeah, this is what I've been after. Yeah. So I will also just say, you and I are both strong proponents of a explicitly and intentionally free grace gospel. If you're not free grace out there, I strongly recommend you read it, because I think just a lot of your more traditional, who haven't thought about the label, like your traditional kind of Baptistic provisionist sort of guys, I think they would be like, yeah, this is where I am as well.
Yep. And I actually have a couple comments on the Lotus videos that guys like, hey, I'm a provisionist, but I am 100% Lotus guy too. And so it's not specifically, explicitly free grace. It's just what we believe biblical soteriology is. Yeah. And so it's good. But like you said, I love having a label. That way people can at least identify with something. So
let's get into the label then. In this video, I'm going to talk about the L, and what I'm going to ask you to do is each one of them just kind of walk through what the LOTUS, and if you can, I'd like you to compare each one. I know there's roses, and I know there's daisy and all these others, but tulip is the big one. So I'd like you to mention, just for a context. We don't want to spend all the time on the Calvinists, but let's talk about in these videos what the Lotus is about, particularly in comparison to the contrast. Any other thing you need to feel free to compare it to, we can look at that as well. But let's start here with the L in the Lotus. What does L stand for and why?
So essentially the L in Lotus stands for liable depravity. And again, because my whole basis was comparing this to TULIP, contrasting it with TULIP. Every tenet within Lotus, you'll find that the ending from the TULIP tenets are the same. So you got depravity, election, atonement, grace, and then of the saints, if you will. And
Hmm.
so liable depravity is really contrasted with Tulip's total depravity, or what many people acknowledge as the fact that it's total inability.
Hmm.
Sproul says, and I'm gonna, mention some things from the book, but Sproul
Sure,
actually
please do.
argues the fact that total depravity is a misnomer, and he doesn't
Hmm.
like the label because it's not saying what it actually teaches. And so I believe
Right.
he's a radical corruption guy, but he
Hmm.
acknowledges total inability is much more accurate. Another
Hmm.
thing, as far as total depravity is concerned, or inability, is there's many Calvinists that will argue, and I'll quote, like R.C. Sproul says, one cannot embrace the T and reject any of the other four letters with a
Right.
degree of consistency. And so T in TULIP is the bedrock foundation.
Yep.
And in essence, according to TULIP, what we probably already know is the fact that because of man's sin, and the fact that they're born sinful, man is utterly depraved. Not so far depraved that we can't do uh, as wicked and evil as
Hmm.
possible with our sinful nature, but it's the fact that mankind cannot even seek after God, that
Right.
there's no desire. The only thing mankind can do, according to the T, is fulfill the natural tendencies of the flesh, and that's just to live contrary to God. And
Right.
so, with that, that means the gospel has to be forced upon the individual. They have to be given the gifts of faith and gifts of regeneration, gifts of grace to go ahead and believe. They'll use
Hmm.
passages like Romans 3, where no one seeks God, there's none righteous. And
Hmm.
Psalm 14, the fool says in their heart, there is no God. And Psalm 14, Psalm 52. And so, really, what the T talks about is that mankind is utterly depraved. They cannot do any good, which I would agree, to merit righteousness, but also they cannot even seek after
Right.
God, which I would disagree with.
Right.
One of the reasons I would disagree with is the fact that in John chapter 5, verse number 40, Jesus says that you will not come to me that you might have life.
Hmm.
So when Jesus Christ is talking to these people, he's saying that the onus of their rejection of the gospel is the fact that they are making a free will choice not to believe. Whereas the T says, no, you just have to live according to your natural state. You can't even respond positively to the gospel.
So
So
let me interrupt
liable,
you. Is that where,
yeah,
go ahead. Yeah, I was going to ask, is that where the word liable comes in? Is that what you're
it
getting at?
it does, because from what I've studied, whether it's Thomas Boer, Westminster Confession, R.C. Sproul, all these others,
Mhm.
that if you take total inability to that nth degree, like the honest Calvinist does, it's actually man's sinfulness, man's actions, and man's rejection of the gospel isn't because of man's volition, it's
Yeah.
because God has predestined them to reject. And so, in essence, the logical conclusion is God is liable for man's rejection of the gospel,
Mhm.
which I explain that a lot, and I
Right.
refute that a lot. Whereas liable depravity and LOTUS rightfully places the blame of man's willful rejection upon man
Hmm.
himself, because God has reached down, God has provided the means of salvation, the means of reconciliation by Jesus Christ and his death, burial, resurrection from the cross. And so the means is there. And then God is petitioning man to believe the gospel to receive
Hmm.
everlasting life. And so, for one who does not believe, it's not because they weren't predestined according to total inability, it's the fact that they are willfully rejecting the gospel message. And that's really what I'm trying to draw out with liable depravity. And so, liable in the sense that man is liable for their own sinfulness because we have inherited the sin nature from Adam, in that unless we seek to place our faith in Christ, we're liable for our own rejection, our own condemnation. And so that's the biggest contrast with the
Got
T
it.
and how that's concerned.
So what I'm hearing you say, and again,
Mhm.
this ought, I'm hoping it lands people as just simply biblical, is what I'm hearing you say is that you're granting with many in the variety of Christian traditions that nothing I can do can make me good enough to go to heaven. You're granting that. So hence the depravity piece. I can't be good enough to go to heaven. But then there's this call that we have to put our faith in Jesus. And you're saying that whether or not I do that, that I can do that. And if I choose not to put my faith in Jesus, that's on me. It's not because I don't have the ability to do so. It's precisely because I do have the ability to do so that God is going to hold me accountable for that refusal to put my faith in Him.
Exactly. Now you and I, we would not reject man's depravity.
Right.
We just wouldn't define it as the tea and tulip defines it, that we
Right.
can't even respond positively to the gospel and that we can only be slave to our natural state, natural fleshly man. But we would agree in the fact that there's nothing you or I and anybody can do to merit our own righteousness. We have to
Mhm.
believe in the gospel message. And this is what, is commonly referenced within the gospels when Jesus Christ constantly says, believe in the gospel. And Jesus says, because you did eat of the loaves, you were filled. There's a volitional response. Acts 15:17, that the residue of men might seek after the Lord. There's common references that man is able to seek, but that doesn't merit one's own righteousness. That's
Mhm.
just believing in the gospel. One of the things, the biggest issue I have with total depravity is the fact that, and I sort of wrote it out in this, I call it the Calvinist paradox.
Mhm.
And it says that if man does not believe the gospel because man is unable to believe the gospel apart from the work of God, is man at fault for not believing?
Mm.
If man is at fault for not believing the
Right.
gospel, even though God does not give man the ability to believe, does this not reveal an injustice from God? And so,
Yeah, there's a principle in ethics, and we can debate if it applies to God. I don't see how it wouldn't in this case. Is there's a principle in ethics which is that ought implies can. I can't hold you accountable for something you ought to do if you can't in principle do it.
yep, exactly. And late flowers draws us out a lot too. The mere aspect that Jesus Christ is offering and asking and petitioning people to believe means the fact that they have the ability to
Right.
believe. And it's just one of those deals where if the tea and tulip is accurate, then it's painting a sadistic, tyrannical, and malevolent
Yeah.
God. Because here Jesus is saying in John 5:40, you're not willing to come that you might have life. But if T's right, it's not that they're not willing, it's that Jesus is saying the Father never predestined you. And
Right.
so I'm going to tell you, you could have had life if my
Right.
Father predestined you, but he never did. So
It's
there's an
almost
aspect
like
of sadist.
no, go ahead. Yeah, it's almost like the reason you don't have you're not willing to come is because I've willed you not to will to come, and I'm going to punish you because I've willed you not to will. And that just seems
Yep.
again, I appreciate on my side some of the technical philosophical arguments of the nature of free will, but I don't see how even all that running its course, I still think you land back in that spot of God has just willed you not to will. And I just don't see how that is not a
And
highly problematic position.
yeah, and exactly. And when we look at the New Testament, we see many passages that reveal the fact that man has a responsibility to
Yeah.
believe. I mean, whether it's Matthew 27, where he saved others when Jesus on the cross, if he be the King of Israel, let him now come down from the cross and we will believe him. In Luke
Mm-hmm.
24, oh fools, slow of heart to believe. John 4:48, except you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. And it goes on and on. So, the Calvinists, they'll like to use Romans 3 or Psalm 53 or First Corinthians 2,
Right.
14 through 15. I think it is, as far as the he that is spiritual judges all things, that he himself is judged of no man.
Right.
Natural man receives not the things of the Spirit of God, they are foolishness unto him. But in the book, I explain these passages clearly, which does not contradict the volitional choice of man and what Paul or what the psalmist is trying to articulate. Like, for instance, in First Corinthians 2:14, where the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual man, judges all things, the natural man does not, they're foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
Paul's merely contrasting a natural, unregenerate man and a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual, mature Christian. What he doesn't talk about in there is that third man known as the carnal man,
Right.
which is the spiritually immature believer. And so the
Right.
distinction is the natural man, the unregenerate, can't discern these things, but the spiritual, the mature believer can discern all these things. And he's talking about all things. He's not just
Yeah.
talking about the gospel, he's saying everything. And so a believer's ability to discern things is based
Mm-hmm.
upon the maturity and their faith and their knowledge of the scriptures. And so a lot of these passages are just used and abused. And like I talked about before, if you misinterpret a Bible, you're going to misapply it. And then it leads to
Sure.
conditionalism, it leads to anxiety and a mischaracterization of the character of God.
Right. Let me just play with one objection then before we move
Uh-huh.
on to the next letter. I think the one that's at least that lands the most with people, and I think this is probably the tip of a lot of Calvinist tongues, is the dead in sins. And the argument is if I'm dead, corpses are dead. They can't do anything. So how can a dead man believe? I think this is the closest thing they have to a proof text of not simply depravity, but of inability. So how would you, as a believer in liable depravity, how do you interpret that passage?
Again, it goes back to understanding that words have meanings. Words carry a range of meanings, and finding out what does the word dead actually mean.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, I go back to the Garden of Eden. I go back
Mm-hmm.
to Genesis 3. For the day that you eat of this fruit, you will surely die. Dying, you will die. And the moment that they ate of the fruit, they were separated from God.
Mm-hmm.
It's a separation. And so physical death is a separation, spirit from the body, soul from the
Mm-hmm.
body. Spiritual separation is a separation, man from God in relationship and reconciliation. And so in the Garden of Eden, when we're looking at it soteriologically, it simply means that man is separated from God because of their sinfulness and that they need a covering or a aspect of reconciliation to be justified again. And so with that, I know they like to use, John chapter 11 and Lazarus, when Lazarus was dead and Jesus commanded him to come forth and he resurrected him. But the interesting thing about that is, I forget who mentions it, if you're saying that because Lazarus was dead, he couldn't respond to the gospel, then
Mm-hmm.
in the same vein, because Lazarus was dead, he couldn't commit sin. And so we have to use the same logic to go ahead and posit these other aspects and attributes as well. And so if a dead person can't believe, a dead person can't sin. So what does
Right.
Lazarus need to be saved from? And so, plus, when you understand the aspect of physical death as separation of spirit and body, yes, that may have been Lazarus's body in the tomb, but he's been dead for more than 3 days. And so we
Mm.
understand his spirit would have been Sheol. And so there is a separation physically from the spiritual and the physical body. And so he was commanding his body to come back and bringing the spirit and the body back to life once again. And so this is just a poor analogy as far as being dead in our separation. It just means the fact that we are separated, estranged from God, and apart from placing faith in Jesus Christ, we will stay on a course of separation until the lake of fire. So,
Excellent. Very good. And my assumption is that is laid on in the book, as long as all these are the passages that when I want to say one last thing about
yeah.
just my personal comment, and then we'll end this part of the discussion and move on. It seems to me, and you read this earlier, Danny, that the T is the bedrock on which everything else stands. And so to me, largely, this is really the burden of proof is on the Calvinists to show that humans are unable to believe the gospel from scriptures. And that I think fundamentally doesn't work. I think it's more than sufficient in scripture to show that we can't be saved by our righteousness, and that God has to do what's necessary so that we can be saved, which accounts for depravity. But beyond that, I think that everything else they say, which they think in election, all the rest is, that's just not true, just because the Bible simply doesn't say we can't believe. And I think that one of the virtues of liable depravity is it does what the Bible does. It holds us accountable for our own failure to do something we can and should do, which is to believe in Jesus Christ.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
Very good. Well, Danny, we're going to pause this for now. Thank you. And we're going to come back shortly with another conversation on the next part of Lotus, the L. All right.
Got it.
Danny, thanks for today's conversation. Tell us a bit more about where we can find more from you and more about Lotus merch.
Well, first, just thanks for having me, Chris. It's always an honor and a privilege, and then your heart and your passion for Lotus is truly encouraging as well. So I do appreciate that and everything
My
Golfside is
pleasure.
doing. But as far as this is my YouTube channel, C4C Apologetics. We do a lot of free grace stuff, a lot of Christian apologetics. I do a lot of interviews. So you just find me at C4C Apologetics. If you'd like to get the book, you can get the book on Amazon. Like I said, you can get the paperback, you can get the Kindle. It's free on Kindle Unlimited. If you've read the book, please, please, please leave a review. Leave a review. It helps the algorithm. Plus, it just allows people to know whether this book is worthy to read and take up real estate on somebody's bookshelf. And then finally, if anybody wants Lotus merch, if you were to go to c4capologetics.com, if you just scroll down, you'll find a little picture of stuff here, Shop Lotus merch. If you click there, it'll take you to everything that's available. If you notice, there are weird prices on here. I point that out to the fact that I make $0 profit. I'm not in this for money. If you want a mug, get a great mug, stickers, tumblers, whatever. But no profit is made. Just find it on c4capologetics.com and you can get a Lotus shirt just like the one I'm wearing. And so, Chris, I'll have to send you one as well. Let me know your size and we'll get it out there.
Send me a shirt. I'm going to buy a mug, and I might have a little prize for the first person who comments the first video they see me carrying a Lotus mug. Danny, thanks much. See you next time. God bless.